Well, thanks for having me. I will talk a little bit about some demographic issues that have something to do with population growth. I will sort of tell you right up front, I'm not a believer in the problem of overpopulation, and I'm studying this. I've done this for 40 years, and I will sort of try to give you some facts, some arguments why I believe what I believe, and actually it's not really belief, it's, I think it comes out of my work. So let's get through it. If you have a question, I think I will talk for about half an hour, and time, shut me off after half an hour, sometimes I forget. We can talk, we can discuss things while I talk, and if I feel like I want to continue a train of thought, then I will ignore you just for 1 minute. But then we will have about half an hour, whatever, to discuss what I have to say here. So let me just go to the first slide. Those are the issues that I would like to address. So there will be a slide or two on each of these points. Let's give you a minute to look at that. I also must say that I got this invitation, I guess it was the week before last. I didn't have all that much time maybe it could be a better presentation, but I think those are some of the important things that we need to talk about if we really want to get a handle on issues, if there is overpopulation, if we really need population control, or whether family planning wouldn't be the better term, and so on and so forth. All right, let me go to the demographic transition. That's the key theory of it's a key theory of demography, and essentially what this is that over time, countries will go from high levels of fertility and high levels of mortality to low levels of fertility and low levels of mortality. All right? So for 10,000s of years, there was no population growth because fertility was high and mortality was high. It balanced. And then what happened was that for a variety of reasons, mortality dropped. Mortality dropped more rapidly than fertility. And I'll show you a chart in a second. All right? So you had fertility continue high, mortality dropped, the gap is population growth. Then it fell, and now we're at a stage where in a lot of developed countries, mortality is low, fertility is low, very little growth, and again, a stabilization of the population. All right? This is a process that is irreversible. Once a country starts dropping mortality and fertility, it will never go back up. With mortality, it's clear. Once we have penicillin and we have economic development, mortality will go down. We invent new things, and we cure illnesses from which we would have died earlier. But fertility could go back up, but there is not a single incidence of all the countries in the world where fertility has gone back up on a sustained basis. We had a baby boom, but it lasted like 18 years or so, and then it went down again. And it went down further than it was before, all right? So that's a process, that's a historical process, has something to do with industrialization, has something to do with modernization, has something to do with development. So that's in some ways a good news. So, I'd like you to remember that depending on the level of development, countries are at different stages. All the developed countries are to the right of you. I mean, to your right. Mortality is red is mortality, blue is fertility. You see to the left, it sort of goes up and down because those are not smooth curves. But the result was that there was no population growth. It went on for millenniums. On the right-hand side, again, in fact, you see in some projections here where mortality is above fertility. There are quite a few European countries where more people die than are born. And the only reason that, if you look at their statistics, they have no decline in their population is they have immigration. But on a world basis, it doesn't add, more people still die than are born. The big action here is the middle stage, where you see a gap between the blue line and the red line. And that's where the growth comes in, all right? And so the black line that goes from left to right is a horizontal line, then it goes up, which is population growth, and then it stabilizes again, which means no population growth. So the difference essentially between today and the next 100 years or so, compared to the time before 1750, when in developed countries the demographic transition started, the difference is that we had no population growth then, soon we have no population growth now, or in the future, but we are at a higher level. We have more people now than we had before. But essentially, the curve is what we call in science a logistic curve. It doesn't go straight up. It goes up, and then it sort of, it sort of turns. So we, in the middle of this black curve in stage 3, the slope of the curve changes from increasing to decreasing. So that's why, economists, demographers, we talk about declining rates of growth. We still have growth, but we have growth that is less quick, slower than we had it before. Yes?
I just need, now, the red line is which one?
The red line is something you don't want. Red is always something you don't want, and that's mortality. Be careful.
We don't want the red, right?
Well, we don't want to die. Most of us don't want to die, right?
But the black line is what?
The black line is the result of the blue line and the red line, and that is population growth. So that as you have the gap here, fewer people die than are born, population goes up. But as there's a balance between birth and death, over here and over there, there's no population growth. That's why this line is horizontal and this line is horizontal. So the real action in terms of population growth is this middle stage where mortality drops and fertility doesn't drop quite as quickly. All right?
And how many years does that cover?
It depends on the country.
Oh, okay.
It could last 100 years, it could last 2, 3, 4 generations, and then it stabilizes. And the reason why this is more of a problem in developing countries is that for our society, for the US, for Europe, most of the decline in mortality was the result of better nutrition. People who are healthy are less likely to get sick. We didn't have penicillin until about mid-20th century. A lot of the good stuff that we can now get from our pharmacies didn't exist. So our decline, when I say our, I mean the developed countries, our decline was a sort of a very moderate decline, because the only way we could have brought down mortality was that we were healthier people. In developing countries, you have that, what I just described, and you have all the medical technology. So their gap is greater, not because necessarily their fertility is so much higher, but mortality dropped much more rapidly. And that made the population growth rates higher in developing countries. But in virtually all of these countries, they go down too. But that's basically, this is something that is universal. There's no debate over it. You see it in every country. There are hardly any country in the world, there's hardly any country in the world that's still here. All countries are either here or there. So that's why I'm saying that everything sort of points in the right direction. Even back in 1975 or so, 74, something around that time, when Paul Ehrlich's book, Population Bomb, was published, by that time everything already had changed. But the book and the UN population conference in Bucharest in 1974, everyone talked about, we are exploding, and we were still growing rapidly, but every year we were growing less rapidly than the previous year. All right? And I will come back to that, because that's a very important point, how quickly you grow or how quickly you stop growing, because there are real costs to doing things too quickly. But I'll show you that in a second.
Does that black line ever go back down?
It is possible, right.
Because sustainable resources low, that would be fine. But when the population jumps and stays there, what's happening to the rest of the resources that our humans are using?
I don't think we have a real good handle. I don't think anyone really, truly, honestly, other than just having some personal beliefs, has a number that tells us that 8 billion is okay for the world, but 9 billion isn't. 6 billion is okay, but 7 isn't. 12 is okay. So no one really knows.
But we're seeing resources go away, like rainforests.
We see resources going away, right?
Right. Is that ever going to go back down so those rainforests come back up?
I'm not sure the rainforest will come back, but maybe something else will come back. But I will actually get to that point because we only, sometimes we only focus on population. And if, we could protect the rainforest. Brazil isn't all that big. I mean, Brazil is a huge country and has only 200 million people. There's absolutely no reason in the world why Brazil's population causes the rainforest in Brazil, in the Amazon area, to be eroded. It's because, we in the developed world and corporations want to make money. If we would protect those rainforests, we could protect them. We just don't. We have no regulation.
Our base level, so we put up our pollution level when we're way up here. That's not necessarily too good right now for the rest of the world. The climate change is going into effect.
Right.
And part of that's that jump. That's
right.
too many of us right now.
But
does that ever go back down where we're not polluting?
There's not an immediate relationship that's not affected by a whole bunch of other stuff between the number of people and the pollution that we create. We have stable population, almost stable population in the US. We're not growing all that much here. All right. In Europe, we actually have negative population growth all over Europe.
Well, I just went
okay, let me finish. Well, immigration is just a move from one country to another. It doesn't add anything to the world. All right. So that in the developed world, in the industrial world, in the rich world, we have almost no population growth. We have very, very little. But we are using up all the resources. So that I told a gentleman over lunch that, for every American who is born, we could have 100 Ethiopians. And 100 Ethiopians would have less of an imprint on the world than any one of us does. So it's not just purely numbers. It's what we do and how careful we are with resources or not careful. So it's a much more complicated issue, the relationship between resources and population than just numbers and resources. There are a lot of papers. I mean, there are really good people who have looked at that. And while I give it away, I don't have to talk about another slide. But essentially, the best research that exists tells us that the effect of regulatory practices is far more important than the number of people. Within a context, I mean, obviously, we can't support 100 billion, all right? But there's no evidence that we ever will have that. But within the parameters of, let's say, the United Nations projections of how many people we will have by the end of the current millennium, the current century, by 2100. Within those parameters, regulatory and lifestyle issues and, the price of gas and all these issues, how we protect land or not protect land, seems to be far more important than just purely the number of people. But within the parameter, of course, it would be crazy to say people don't matter. But if you put this in the context where I said everything is going down, everything is pointing in the right direction if we think of the right direction of a balance of mortality, fertility, so that we don't have any further growth. All those things are pointing in the right direction. But even if we stabilize population, and even if the black line would go down, maybe half, so it wouldn't be quite as low as it was, 300,000 years ago,